The news keep rolling in for Tesla, no pun intended, because today is a very historic day. A little bit of a surprise, I think, for most people watching the all-decisive Cybercab launch, production launch, that we all expected for April, as I reported on yesterday after Elon responded to a post of mine on X where Elon elaborated, yes, we're doubling down on April. April will be production launch of the Cybercab. As you all know, who are following this channel, the Cybercab production launch is so important for us as shareholders, for us as people who believe in embodied AI, AGI coming, and that Tesla has the lead in that whole field of making AI physical, of bringing AI into the world. Cybercab is so decisive because it doesn't have a steering wheel, it doesn't have any kind of human controls in there, which means once we are in mass production or production of Cybercab at all, it gives us a very strong indicator when Robotaxi is going to start to scale. You know the whole story. Basically, Cybercab is a giant commitment by Tesla to a big multi-billion-dollar CapEx build-out, manufacturing build-out, to produce a vehicle, a car, a product that can only be used if FSD, full self-driving technology, fully autonomous vehicles are actually functional in the market. Because Tesla would have no possibility of utilizing and using these Cybercabs that are still very expensive to produce, 20,000 per piece. It has no way of selling them or using them otherwise, which means there is a huge forcing function and huge push to Tesla to actually get Robotaxi going. So we know when they start producing these things at scale that they have to be ready with FSD. Now here comes the news for today. Tesla account officially on X actually announced today the first Cybercab off the production line at Giga Texas. Like, let that sink in. Look at this. Here's the amazing Giga Texas team. And you see all these great people here who make the future happen. But what is this? What is this? It is the first Cybercab. And maybe you ask, Joe, what are you talking about? We already have dozens and dozens of Cybercabs running around, driving around. Running around will be Optimuses. Optimi. So what is so special about this? Well, you have to understand how car production actually works. You don't have a production line ready when you have the first prototype on the road. You are actually building them by hand, kind of, without the production line. The first dozens, maybe even hundreds, to do all the testing, to test all the tools and all the parts. So there is a previous pre-production line production that is more piloting and prototyping. And that is what we have seen. So this today means the actual final production line, the real deal, the scalable production line, at least in the first iteration, is ready. And it has produced the first Cybercab. Now that is very important and just is the final and complete confirmation that April will be the real production launch. Because what happens now? We have February 17th, so we have 6 weeks left to the beginning of April. In these 6 weeks, they will produce more of these. I would say at the minimum, they will produce 1 per day, and then they will produce 2 per day, and then 5 per day, and then 10 per day. And I think it's very likely that we are getting to a run rate of 10 Cybercabs a day at a minimum by April. And then, of course, we start optimizing this ramp. That is how automotive production actually works behind the scenes. You're not going to 2 million a year output right off the bat, but you have to actually get there and optimize this thing. So I actually asked ChatGPT, I also asked Grok, but Grok failed, unfortunately, about realistic scaling. And here's what came out of that. I will just present this. This is not as smart as someone who actually knows this stuff, like Jeff Lutz, for example. I think Jeff would have a more accurate quantitative estimate here how the ramping works from here. But let's go with what ChatGPT actually tells us. So I asked it, how does the scaling actually look like? And I will get to it in a second why this is so important. And we will also take a look at Robotaxi tracker today because there's more stuff happening today, even compared to yesterday, which is all very interesting. And then we will take a look at the stock because we can also read from the stock movements today some very interesting things that will translate into real pioneer alpha, into generating alpha with a little bit of trading. That's the overview over this video, just so you know what's coming. So here, let's start with how the production scaling actually could look like. So here, We see engineering validation pre-SOP. So here, the start of production. We are basically talking about this, right? And before, it was engineering validation builds, the start of production line. We have roughly 50 produced, in my opinion. Roughly 50 Cybercabs are probably produced. We saw like multiple dozens tracked by the Robotaxi tracker, but I estimate 50 to 100 are probably produced and sitting somewhere or driving around in the previous 6 months. So now, when we actually start that production line, that happened today, the estimate of ChatGPT is 5 to 25 per week. I think that's realistic, like 1 per day, right? Maybe tomorrow we have the next one. Maybe the day after we have the next one. Maybe the day after that, which is Saturday or something, we will have 2. And then we produce 2 per day. You know, when you produce them, there's a lot of complexity. So you produce them to check everything out and then say, okay, let's ramp it out to 3, ramp it out to 5 per day. And then you basically measure, okay, are these cars actually flawless? Are there any issues? And then that's how you ramp. So realistically, if we say 5 to 25 a week over the next 6 weeks, right, to actual launch, to April, we will do the math in a second. But it tells you we will probably produce 100. I think that's a very, very realistic guess that before April, we will have produced 100 Cybercabs now. 100 more. 100 more Cybercabs. Then, in April, we will start getting into a more serious ramp with 20 to 100 per week, getting to 400 a month in April. In April, May, 400 a month. And then early ramp, we are getting to 2,000 a month. I think that will take some time, 2 to 6 months. So now we are talking end of the year. So we are getting maybe to 2,000 to 4,000 a month in December. I think that's very realistic. Maybe 5,000, maybe 6,000 per month by December, which gets us to that point around 20,000 this year. Is what I believe more and more the realistic number. 10 to 20 to maybe 30,000, but I think 10 to 20,000 Cybercabs. That is how things actually look like. Okay, so we all think, and we are all bullish here for the end of the year, but let's look at the next 8 to 12 weeks. If this is true, let's do the math. We have 100 produced by April. That's conservative, by the way. And then we are ramping up to 500 in April, 400, 500. So we will have, let's say, 500 by end of April. Cybercabs, 500 Cybercabs. But then it gets more serious. Then we are going into the 500 to 2,000 per month. So I think we're getting to 1,000 probably by May, June, and then 2,000 a month by July. And that tells us a little bit about the forcing function. Then we can get into a territory where the Cybercab production alone doubles every month or grows by 50% or something like that. And if that's all the case, this is a huge validation. Then we are actually talking about delivering, what did I say, 500 by April, 1,500 by May, which is like what I'm aiming for. I'm saying 1,800 Cybercabs or 1,800 Robotaxis deployed, including the Model Ys, 1,800 by April. I'm sticking to this prediction that I made nearly, 10 months ago. I said April, 1,800, the magic number in my opinion. That is the equivalent of 5% of free cash flow of 2024 annualized. So huge deal. So still another validation point. We might get there by April or latest by May with that rate. Very, very important. And if we then go to the Robotaxi tracker, also very interesting, we added another four just in the last few hours. From 335, 37 to 341 today. So yesterday it was 4 less. So we see there is a very steep increase going on here, which also coincides with everything we just discussed. So the Model Y is ramping as Robotaxi. We see down here, I think, where are the Cybercabs? Here are the Cybercabs. 29 Cybercabs spotted, 22 in Austin. So here are the Cybercabs with the actual number plates that are live or spotted today, yesterday, and so on. You can see it on the Robotaxi tracker. So here is where you see 29 Cybercabs. So now you know the math. If you then connect the dots, 30 Cybercabs out, and now we are ramping to probably 5 a week, and then very quickly 100 coming in the next 6 weeks, and then 500 a month, 1,000 a month, and so on. This will feed this Robotaxi tracker chart very, very nicely. So very important news. And if you continue drawing this line out, by the way, you are ending roughly about, 1,500, 1,800 by April, May. So what does the stock do? That's what we are here for. The stock today, not doing too well. NASDAQ actually positive in the end, right? NASDAQ had like a interesting little journey. It dropped quite a lot, over 1% down in the beginning, but recovered very quickly. Market keeps being confused. Market wants to be negative, but there's no reason to be negative. So the market bumps against this floor that I pointed out here. If you go to a 1-year view, you see, or 5-year, you see that the NASDAQ is here since October, bumping against this new high and forming a base, in my opinion. This is not going down because everything is bullish. The Fed is bullish. The economy, inflation is coming down. Fed has to ease. Unemployment is under pressure. At the same time, profits go through the roof. Revenues go through the roof in the new AI economy. So very bullish for stocks. The market wants to be negative, tries its best. That's a perfect situation. The market maximizes negativity, but everything is super bullish. I mean, the facts are super bullish. So that means there's nowhere to drop. And when you look at the NASDAQ here, it tries to go down here to 22,000 to the old lows from November, but can't. It attempted it again today. It's bouncing off. Here it went down to 22,200. And I think there's just huge resistance here because it makes no sense. So that makes me kind of confident that where's this thing going to go? I have a little concern about March. I think there might be a major attack on the market, a major last attempt to really drop this thing. Let's see where it can go. I think it's just very hard to drop this, but let's see where we can go. I maintain my caution here, but Tesla is just getting extremely bullish with all these news. And what we see, this is very important. That's the takeaway from this video. After we understand all the things that I explained before, Cybercab coming. Here's the situation. I said that I'm concerned that Tesla might test the 400, which by the way it did today. So there you have it. Sometimes I have my concerns and it just happens and I totally is exactly what I'm concerned about. But also I think less and less that Tesla can drop too much before April because all that stuff is now incoming like crazy. And these are basically two overlapping curves. What is the market perception? And when does the market start to react? When does the stock start to react to these robotaxi increases, right? And there's a very simple rule I'm looking for. It starts to react once the market takes it seriously. When does it take it seriously? When it keeps increasing and it hits a critical mass. What is this critical mass? I think for sure 1,000 would be the critical mass, but maybe it's even before that. So we are now rapidly approaching the point where robotaxi becomes real. It's somewhere between now and some point in the very close future where robotaxi becomes real for the markets. And once robotaxi becomes real for the markets, once the stock markets and investors understand this thing is actually real, the scaling will translate into bullishness in the stock. But only after they take this seriously. For now they say, oh, this is just a little website, who knows what this even means. They are not really scaling. That's what they think. And that's a function of, the growth and the base. So this is all rapidly approaching. And now with this news today, I just think it becomes just harder and harder to deny reality. And it's incredibly exciting. That's why I have to do these videos whenever something happens, because we only have 6 to 8 weeks left, in my opinion, before the cat is out of the bag. And once the cat is out of the bag, the cat being robotaxi as a real business is happening. That is the cat. At the moment where the market understands this cat is now out, they will all start tracking what we are doing here. They will all jump on the train. And if Tesla continues to scale, then the stock will go through the roof. It will be a forcing function. It will be a hard forcing function. Everyone will have to buy the stock with every robotaxi being deployed. But we didn't reach that point. So it's all the question, when do we reach this point? And what happened today is an enormous validation point. Again, that's why we have to truly pay attention to catch that inflection point, because we want to basically front run this whole situation and really double down. I mean, you do whatever you want, do your own research, don't listen to me, but I am gonna double down. I'm gonna go above 100% Tesla exposure, significantly above 100% Tesla exposure, once I have the certainty that there is the inflection point coming, the inflection point that forces the market to react. We are very close, very, very close. and we will keep observing this very, very closely. So you can go to pioneerlands.org where we discuss these things and track them in real time. We actually have some very cool things coming up this week. A little delayed because of all of these things, and we are launching the Pioneer Reserve, Pioneer Bonds, where people, qualified and professional investors can participate in my strategy. So this is a lot of work for me because we have to set up a securitization vehicle in Luxembourg. We have to do a lot of things, set up a feeder LLC in the United States. So there's a lot of work on the background. That's why I'm focusing only on Tesla right now. But we have a lot of things in preparation for Pioneer Lands, Robotaxi tracker, Robotaxi prediction app, hopefully launching this week. So you have to be in pioneerlands.org to do this kind of stuff. And I will hopefully have a video on the Robotaxi tracker because it's so important. The Robotaxi predictor this week, coming maybe on Thursday, my video on it where you can see how it works, how we can all predict this growth and then share our insights in that predictor. It's going to be very hot and very important to stay ahead. So I hope that was interesting. See you tomorrow.